Orchestrated fresh memoir narrative, avoiding forbidden names. Structuring financial revenge arc. Orchestrated fresh memoir narrative, avoiding forbidden names. Structuring financial revenge arc. The Thanksgiving dishes were still soaking in the sink when I found the folder my daughter had left out on the kitchen desk, and inside it was a tidy little plan to erase me. A glossy brochure for a memory care community, my name already typed across the intake form. A power of attorney document waiting on a signature that hadn't happened yet. A realtor's printout for the house, my house, with comps circled in pink highlighter like it was already spoken for. I didn't holler. I didn't go room to room looking for somebody to blame. I dried my hands on the dish towel my late wife had hemmed 20 years ago, sat down at the table I paid off twice over, and made one phone call. 3 weeks later, when the auto pay started bouncing and none of their plans would turn over, the whole bunch of them went pale. Not because I took a single thing that belonged to them. Because I finally quit handing over everything that belonged to me. I'm 64. I spent 38 years pulling wire and bending conduit. The last 15 running my own small electrical outfit out of a garage in a beat-up Econoline. I never made a fortune, but I made a living, and I saved like my old man taught me to, which is to say nervously and constantly. My father was a plumber in Toledo with cracked knuckles and a temper he kept mostly under the hood. He used to tell me, "People will let you carry the whole load, son. They'll let you carry it right up until your knees buckle, and then they'll act surprised you fell." I thought I understood that when I was 20. I didn't understand it until this past November, standing in a kitchen that smelled like turkey grease and somebody else's idea of my future. My wife passed 3 years ago. Cancer, the slow kind that gives you time to say everything and then takes the person you said it to. Her name was Joan, and for 31 years she was the warmth in every room I walked into. After she was gone, the house we'd raised our daughter in felt like a coat 3 sizes too big. Every hallway echoed. I'd find myself talking to the dog about the weather just to hear a voice that wasn't on the TV. My daughter saw that. She came around more, brought casseroles, sat with me. I was grateful. God help me, I was so grateful that when she and her husband floated the idea, I jumped at it like a man who's been treading water too long. The idea was simple, the way the dangerous ones always are. Sell the old place. Too big, too many ghosts, too many stairs for a man my age. Pool the money. Buy something newer out in Brookfield with an in-law suite on the main floor so I'd have my own space but never be alone. We'd be a family again, all under one roof. My grandson could see his grandfather every day. I cried a little when she pitched it. I thought Joan would have loved that. I thought it was the closest thing to a second chance a widower gets. So I sold. The old house cleared right around $280,000 after the mortgage, and I put every dollar of it down on the new place in Brookfield. A nice ranch on a cul-de-sac, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, the in-law suite they promised. When the loan officer ran the numbers, it turned out my credit and my cash were the spine of the whole deal. My son-in-law's credit was a mess, a couple of repos in his 20s he never quite outran, and my daughter wasn't working at the time. "It's just cleaner if the loan's in your name, Dad," my son-in-law said, sliding the papers across the bank's table. "We'll square it up later. It's all the same money anyway." I signed. The deed went in my name. The mortgage went in my name. The homeowner's insurance, the property taxes, the utility accounts. All me. I told myself that's what family does. You don't keep a ledger with your own people. That was the first mistake. The ledger was the only thing that would have saved me. For a while it was good. Or it looked good, which I've since learned isn't the same thing. I paid the mortgage every month out of my pension and Social Security and the slow drip of my retirement account. I paid the taxes when the county sent the bill. When the furnace went, I paid for the furnace. When my son-in-law decided he needed a bigger truck for a side business that never quite materialized, I co-signed the loan because his credit couldn't carry it and mine could. $41,000 at a rate I'm embarrassed to repeat. My name right under his on the contract. I drove a 14-year-old Silverado with a cracked dash, and he rolled out of the driveway in a brand-new crew cab I was on the hook for. My grandson was 19 by then, a sophomore at the State University an hour up the interstate. Smart kid, or smart enough. I was proud of him in that helpless way. You're proud of a kid you can't quite reach. When the tuition bills came, I paid them, not a 529, not loans in his name. Me, my card, my checking account, semester after semester. Books, the meal plan, the dorm, the laptop when his got stolen, which I had my doubts about. Nobody ever sat me down and asked me to do it. It just happened, the way water finds the low spot. My daughter would say, "The bill came again, Dad," in that light voice, and I'd handle it and nobody would say thank you, and we'd all pretend that was normal. I want to be honest about something, because the men in these situations always come off as pure saps, and I won't pretend I was a saint or a doormat from the jump. I pushed back early more than once. The first Christmas in the new house, my grandson made some crack about how the basement smelled like old man, and I told him flat out that the old man paid for the roof over the smell, and he could watch his mouth in my house. He went quiet. My daughter pulled me aside later and said I'd embarrassed him, that he was just joking, that I needed to pick my battles, so I picked fewer of them. That's how it happens. Not all at once. You stand your ground, and you get told the ground was never yours to stand on, and one day you realize you've backed up so far, you're standing in the yard. The disrespect didn't arrive like a slap. It arrived like a draft you can't find the source of. My grandson stopped calling me Grandpa and started calling me by my first name, the way you'd address a contractor. When I'd ask about his classes, he'd answer his phone instead. My son-in-law started making decisions about the house, replacing the back fence, taking out a home equity line of credit against the place. And I'd find out after the fact, because the HELOC paperwork needed my signature too, and he'd slide it in front of me with a pen already uncapped. "Just an emergency cushion, Pops," he said. I signed. They drew on it for a kitchen remodel I never asked for. Granite countertops I was scared to set a hot pan on. The in-law suite got smaller too. Not physically. They started using it for storage. My grandson's gym equipment, my daughter's craft bins, boxes of stuff that didn't have anywhere else to go. My recliner ended up in the corner facing a window. I'd sit there in the evenings and hear them in the main part of the house, laughing at something on the television, and not once would anybody think to come get me. I'd tell myself they figured I was tired. I'd tell myself a lot of things. Last spring, they planned a week at a lake in Tennessee. A whole family thing, my daughter, her husband, my grandson, even some cousins. I heard about it the way you hear about weather in another state, secondhand and after the fact. When I asked who I was coming, my daughter touched my arm and said, "We just thought it might be a lot of driving for you, Dad. We didn't want to wear you out." I'm 64, not 84. I changed my own oil, but I nodded and said something about how I'd hold down the fort. And I spent that week alone in the house I'd bought, watering plants that weren't mine, paying a mortgage on a vacation I wasn't invited to. I should have seen the shape of it then. I think part of me did, and just couldn't bear to look straight at it. Joan would have seen it in a week. She had a sense for when somebody was being managed instead of loved. I lost my translator, and I'd been navigating in the fog ever since. Which brings me back to the kitchen, and the folder, and the smell of cooling turkey. Thanksgiving had gone the way they all went lately. I bought the bird and the ham. I got up at 5 to put the turkey in because nobody else was going to. My daughter made the sides she always took credit for. The house filled up with her husband's people, loud men in football jerseys who called me the old fella and asked me to top off their drinks like I was hired help in my own dining room. My grandson came down from school, ate without looking up, and was back in his room before the pie. I carved, I refilled, I washed. And after the last of the guests left, and my daughter and her husband took my grandson out to grab dessert at some place across town, I started in on the kitchen alone, the way I always did. The folder was sitting on the little desk by the pantry, where my daughter pays the bills. A plain manila folder, half open. I wasn't snooping. I want that on the record. I was clearing clutter so I could wipe down the desk. But the brochure slid out, all that staged photography of silver-haired strangers playing checkers, and the name across the top stopped me cold. Cedar Hollow Senior Living, Memory Care and Assisted Living. And underneath, on an intake questionnaire somebody had started filling out in my daughter's careful handwriting, was my full legal name, my date of birth. A line that said, "Resident displays increasing confusion and difficulty managing affairs," with a little check mark next to it. I read that line maybe 5 times. Increasing confusion. Difficulty managing affairs. I'd done the books on a 6-figure household for 3 years without bouncing a check. I could still rattle off the wire gauge ampacity tables from memory. The only thing I had difficulty managing was the suspicion, growing colder by the second, that the people I'd given my house and my savings and my second chance to had decided I was a problem to be solved. There was more. A durable power of attorney, the kind that lets somebody else sign your name on anything, with my son-in-law typed in as the agent, and a sticky note that said dad signs get notarized before the holidays. A printout from a realtor with the address of my house and a market analysis, comps circled, an estimated sale price, and a handwritten note in the margin, list in spring after dad settled. And a single sheet, my daughter's handwriting again, a to-do list. Tour Cedar Hollow Mon, POA signed by Fry. Talk to lender Refty to remove dad. Settled. They were going to get me settled. They were going to put me in a home, get my name off the loan, sell the house out from under me, and split what I'd built. And the worst part, the part that sat in my chest like a swallowed stone, was that they hadn't even hidden it well. They'd left it on the desk because they assumed I wouldn't understand what I was looking at. They thought I was already gone. I didn't cry. I want to tell you I felt rage, because rage would have been simpler, would have burned hot and clean. What I felt was quieter and worse. It was the feeling of a man finally reading the last page of a story he'd been living inside and realizing the ending had been written a long time ago in a hand he recognized. I finished the dishes, every last one. I don't know why, except that my hands wanted something to do that made sense. Then I sat down at the table, and I picked up my phone, and I called Sal. Sal and I came up together, 2 apprentices on the same crew back in the 70s, before either of us had a gray hair or a single regret. He's the one man on this earth who never wanted a thing from me, which is probably why we stayed friends for 50 years. He picked up on the 3rd ring, gruff and half asleep. "You know what time it is?" he said. "It's late," I said. "I need a name, a good lawyer, estate, real estate, the works, somebody who won't blink." A pause. "Sal knows me. He knows I don't call at 10 o'clock on Thanksgiving to chat." "What'd they do?" he said. Not a question, a statement. "They put me in a brochure," I said. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "I'll have a name for you by morning. And Mike, don't sign anything. Not a thing, you hear me?" I told him I heard him. I hung up. And for the first time in 3 years, the house didn't feel too big. It felt like a job site. A place with a problem in the walls that I, of all people, knew exactly how to find. They came home around 11, loud, smelling like the wine bar. My daughter asked if I'd finished the dishes, and I said I had. My son-in-law clapped me on the shoulder and said something about the game tomorrow. My grandson didn't say anything at all. I told them good night and went to my suite and sat in the recliner facing the window. And I did the only thing I'm truly good at. I started counting the circuits. Here's what I owned and what they didn't. The deed was in my name. The mortgage was in my name. The taxes, the insurance, the utilities, me, all me. The tuition I'd been paying came straight off my card. There was no contract, no obligation, nothing but habit, holding it in place. The truck I'd co-signed was a tangle, but the payments came out of my account, not his. The HELOC was joint, but it was secured against a house I owned alone. Every single thing that made their comfortable life run traced back, through one wire or another, to a panel I controlled. They thought they'd been living in their house. They'd been living in mine, on my dime. And they'd gotten so comfortable they'd started planning the remodel that didn't include me. I didn't do anything that night except sleep, which surprised me. I slept like a man who'd set down something heavy. The lawyer's name was Ms. Reyes, and Sal was right about her. She didn't blink. I sat across from her the following Tuesday with the folder on her desk, and she went through it page by page with a face like a poker dealer. When she got to the intake form, she set it down and looked at me over her glasses. "You manage your own finances?" she asked. "Down to the penny." "You drive? Take care of yourself? Make your own decisions?" "I bought my own coffee on the way here." "Then this," she said, tapping the form, "is what we call elder financial exploitation, and depending on what they file, it could be worse than that. But before we talk about going after anybody, let's talk about what you actually want." I'd thought about that on the drive over. "I don't want to ruin them," I said. "She's my daughter. He's a fool, but he's her fool. The boy's just learning the wrong lessons from the wrong people." I took a breath. "I want out. I want my name off everything that isn't a thing I chose. I want my house back to being a house I decide about. And I want to stop being the bank for people who'd put me in a home to get at the vault." She nodded slowly like I passed some test. That, she said, we can do. And the beauty of it is, almost all of it you can do yourself, quietly, without filing a single lawsuit. You don't have to take anything, you just have to stop giving. We made a list. Not a list of grievances. A list of valves to close. I'll tell you, there's a peculiar piece of administrative work when you finally aim it at the right target. The next morning I logged into the university's payment portal, the one I'd been feeding for 2 years, and I removed my card as the payment method. 2 clicks. A little confirmation box. That was it. The boys' spring tuition sitting there unpaid, no autopay behind it anymore. I didn't email him. I didn't call. I just stopped being the reason the lights stayed on in a life that had no room for me. I called the lender about the HELOC and had them freeze any further draws, my right as the sole owner of the collateral. I called the insurance company and started the process of separating the auto policy on that truck from my name, which the agent informed me would leave my son-in-law uninsured on a vehicle he couldn't actually pay for, since the payments had been coming out of my account, and I was about to turn that spigot off too. I revoked any authorization for that power of attorney before it ever got signed. Ms. Reyes drafted a letter making crystal clear that no one held any authority over my person or my property, and we sent it certified mail to all 3 of them, which I thought was a nice touch, having the mailman hand them the news. Then the big one. The house. I wasn't going to torch it, but I was done carrying it for people who'd measured it for a sale sign while I was still warm in it. So I made a decision that was entirely mine to make. I was going to move out, stop paying the mortgage and the taxes and the utilities, and put the property on the market. In my name, because it was my name on the deed, unless my daughter and her husband refinanced it into their own names and bought out my equity at fair value. In other words, the free ride was over. They could become actual owners with actual payments and actual responsibility. Or they could watch the house I'd bought get sold to somebody else. There was no third option where I kept funding a household that had penciled me out of it. Ms. Reyes drew everything up clean and legal. I updated my will that same week, naming Sal as executor and leaving things in a way that reflected who'd actually shown up for me. I changed the beneficiaries on my retirement accounts and my life insurance, which had quietly listed my son-in-law as a contingent, a fact I'd forgotten, and that turned my stomach to remember. I notified my bank of a new mailing address. Small things. Administrative things, the kind that don't make a sound when you do them. But each one was a wire I was pulling out of a panel that had been routing my whole life into other people's outlets. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment across town, month to month, 2nd floor, a little balcony that looked out over a parking lot, and, past it, a stand of bare trees. I moved on a Thursday while they were all at work and school. I didn't take a thing that wasn't mine. My recliner, my tools, Joan's hope chest, the photographs, the watch my father left me. I left the granite countertops and the new fence and the gym equipment. I left a copy of the certified letter on the kitchen desk, right where the folder had been, so they'd understand this was a reply. Then I waited. Not eagerly. The way you wait for a fuse to blow once you know you've overloaded the circuit on purpose. It took about 4 days for the world to start ringing. The first call was my grandson, and it wasn't hello. Yo, my tuition didn't go through. The portal's saying I'm not registered for spring. What did you do? No greeting. No question mark, really. Just an accusation with my mistake assumed at the center of it. I didn't answer. I let it ring out, and I sat with my coffee, and I felt nothing I'm ashamed of. Then my daughter. Then my son-in-law. Then my daughter again, closer together now, the way people knock harder when they've decided the door owes them. The voicemails piled up. My daughter's first one was confused, almost gentle. Dad, something's wrong with a bunch of accounts. Did the bank mess something up? Call me back. The second one had an edge. Dad, the truck insurance guy canceled, and the mortgage company sent something weird. This is serious. You need to call me. By the third, the gentleness was gone entirely. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're scaring everybody, and it's not okay. Scaring everybody. As if I were the threat. As if the man they'd diagrammed into a memory care brochure was the one behaving unreasonably. I called Ms. Reyes and told her the calls had started. Don't engage on emotion, she said. Logistics only. When you're ready, tell them what's true and what their options are, and then hang up. They'll try to make it a feeling. Keep it a fact. I waited until I'd had a full night's sleep, and then on the Sunday evening I called my daughter back. She answered before the first ring finished. "Dad, thank God. What is going on? Everyone's losing their minds." "I found the folder," I said. There was a silence so complete I could hear the television in their living room, the room I'd paid for, going quiet as somebody turned it down. "What folder?" she said, but her voice had already changed. She knew. You can hear the moment a person realizes the thing they hid got found. "The brochure," I said. "Cedar Hollow. The intake form with my name on it, the one that says I'm confused and can't manage my affairs. The power of attorney with your husband's name on it. The realtor's printout where you'd circled what you could get for my house. The list, sweetheart, in your handwriting. List in spring after Dad settled." I heard her start to cry, and I'll tell you, 3 weeks earlier, those tears would have ended the conversation. I'd have apologized for something I didn't do just to make them stop. But I knew now what those tears were. They weren't for me. They were for the spreadsheet that had just stopped balancing. "It wasn't like that," she said. "We were worried about you. You've been so down since Mom." "I've been alone since Mom," I said. "There's a difference. You confused the two because it was useful to." Her husband took the phone then, the way he always did when she got soft. "Listen, Pops, let's all settle down here. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. We can sit down, talk this through like adults." "There's no misunderstanding," I said. "I understood the folder perfectly. Here's where things stand. The tuition's stopped. I'm not paying it. He's 19. He can take out a loan or get a job like I did. The truck, you'll need to refinance it into your own name or hand it back to the bank, because I'm off it and I'm done paying for it. The house is in my name and I've moved out. You've got two choices on the house. You buy it from me at fair market value, refinance it into your own names like real owners, or I list it and sell it, which is my right because it's my house and always was. And there will be no power of attorney. Not now. Not ever. I'm not confused. I've never been clearer in my life." "You can't just—" he started. "I already did," I said. "All of it. Last week. Quietly. The way you all liked things. Quiet, so you didn't have to look at them." My grandson's voice cut in, sharp and cracking. "So you're just going to let me drop out over a fight? You said you'd put me through school. You promised Grandma you'd take care of us." That one landed. I won't pretend it didn't. But I'd had 3 years and one folder to learn the difference between love and leverage, and I knew which one was talking. "I said I'd take care of you," I said. "I didn't say I'd let you take care of you," I said. "I didn't say I'd let you take care of yourself off my back forever. There's a word for a grown man you pay for, who treats you like the help. It isn't grandfather. It's Mark." My daughter came back on, frantic now, all the strategy gone out of her. "Dad, please. We can't afford this house without you. You know that. We'll lose everything." "You were going to put me in a home and sell it out from under me to afford your life," I said, as gently as I could manage, which wasn't very. "You'll forgive me if I'm not moved by you suddenly, not being able to afford it without me. That was always the deal you wanted. You just wanted it without me in the building." She was sobbing in earnest now. Her husband was saying my name like a man trying to flag down a bus that's already pulling away. And I understood, sitting in my little rented apartment with the bare trees out the window, that the leverage I'd carried for 3 years had finally slid across the table to my side of it. They were pale on the other end of that line. I couldn't see them, but I knew. You can hear a person go white. "I'll have my attorney send the buyout figures and the timeline this week," I said. "Everything from here goes through her. Don't call the boys' school looking for me to fix it. Don't call the bank. Call your own lawyer. You're going to need to start handling your own affairs." I paused. Funny thing to need to learn at your age. "Dad, don't do this." "I love you," I said, and I meant it, which is the cruelest part, that I meant it. "I will love you for the rest of my life, but I am done being the thing this family stands on while it pretends I'm not in the room. Good night." I hung up before it could turn into negotiation, because I'd learned that too, that the people who left me the folder would talk until I was tired enough to give in, and the only way to win a war of attrition is to stop showing up to it. My hand shook a little after, not from fear, from the strange physical relief of setting down a weight you've carried so long your body forgot it was optional. They didn't buy the house. I think they couldn't. which tells you everything about who'd really been affording it. They moved out in the spring to a rental on the other side of the county, and I sold the place to a young couple expecting their first kid, who shook my hand and called me sir, and meant it. I took my equity, and I bought my apartment building's sister property, a tidy little condo I own outright now. No loan, no cosigner, no one's name on the deed but mine. My grandson took out student loans and, last I heard, got a job at a warehouse to cover the rest. I'm told he complains about it. I hope someday he stops complaining and notices that the complaining is the sound of a man finally carrying his own load. My son-in-law, I don't hear from at all, which is the nicest thing he's done for me in a decade. My daughter and I talk now and then. It's careful the way you walk on a floor you're not sure will hold. The first few calls, she tried the old levers. We're family, you're being cold, Mom would be ashamed. I let those bounce off. Mom, I told her once, would be ashamed of a lot of things, and being ashamed of me wouldn't make the list. After a while she stopped reaching for the levers. Maybe because she finally noticed they didn't move anything anymore. The last time we spoke, she didn't ask me for a thing. She just asked how I was sleeping. I told her the truth, better than I have in years. I spent this past Christmas alone in my condo, and I keep waiting to feel sorry about that, and the sorrow keeps not arriving. I made too much coffee out of habit and drank it slow by the window. I hung my father's watch on a hook by the door where I see it every time I leave. I called Sal and thanked him for picking up the phone that night, and he told me to quit being sappy and come over for cards. I went. I lost $11 and laughed until my face hurt. Here's what I know now that I wish my father had been able to make me hear at 20. There is a difference between being needed and being loved, and the difference is the whole game. They needed me. They needed the checks and the credit score and the signature at the bottom of the page. They'd convinced me, and very nearly convinced themselves, that need was love wearing work clothes. It isn't. Love asks how you slept. Need asks if the payment went through. I spent 3 years answering the wrong question, and I'd probably still be answering it if my daughter hadn't gotten careless enough to leave the answer sitting on the kitchen desk. This isn't a revenge story, whatever it sounds like. I didn't ruin anybody. I didn't take a dime that wasn't mine or tell a single lie. All I did was stop. I stopped paying for a seat at a table they'd already cleared for me. I stopped mistaking the weight on my shoulders for the warmth I actually missed. And in the empty quiet that came after, the quiet they'd planned to ship me off to anyway, I found the one thing the folder never accounted for. Not bitterness. Not even satisfaction, really. Just a plain, late, hard-won piece of a man who got to decide, at 64, that he was worth more than his usefulness. I should have known it sooner, but my old man was right about one more thing. He never got to say out loud, "It's never too late to set the load down, as long as you're the one who chooses where it falls." It took me 3 years and one manila folder to learn the thing my father tried to hand me when I was 20. The folder didn't make my family who they were. It just turned the lights on. They typed my name onto a memory care intake form because I'd spent 3 years teaching them. I'd sign anything, pay anything, swallow anything, and never make a sound. Cause and effect is a quiet law, but it's iron. You train people how to treat you with every bill you cover without being thanked. And one Thanksgiving the training comes due. What saved me wasn't anger. Anger would have had me throwing my grandson's gym equipment in the yard and selling the house out of spite that same afternoon. What saved me was sitting still long enough to see the wiring, to understand that every comfort in that house ran back to a panel only I controlled, and that I could shut it off without smashing a single thing. Reading a situation honestly before you move is its own kind of strength, and most of my life I'd skipped that step in the name of keeping the peace. The peace I kept was never mine. It was theirs, and I was the one paying for it. But seeing clearly only matters if you've got the backbone to act on what you see, and that was the part that nearly didn't come. It would have been so easy to sign the power of attorney, to tell myself my daughter meant well, to fold one more time because folding was familiar and standing up was frightening at my age. The hardest call I ever made wasn't to Ms. Reyes. It was the one I made to myself, the one that finally said, "You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to want more from the rest of your life than to be useful to people who measured you for a home." And here's the part I'd want my grandson to hear someday, if he ever quits complaining long enough to listen. I didn't get even. I never lied, never stole, never took a dollar that wasn't mine, Never canceled a thing out of cruelty when I could have burned the whole arrangement down legally and walked away clean. I left the granite. I left the truck for them to sort out. I did it straight, because the man I wanted to be on the far side of this mattered more than the sting of the wound. Joan would have seen all of it in a week. I needed 3 years and a brochure. But late is still arriving. I sleep now in a place that's mine, under my father's watch by the door, and when the phone rings, I pick it up because I want to, not because somebody's payment bounced. That, it turns out, is what being free actually costs. Everything you were too afraid to set down.